Final practice, informational, pirate movies. Paragraph 1. America's fascination with pirate movies is as old as movies themselves. The very first pirate movie was a 16-minute short film made in New York in 1908 called The Pirate's Gold. In those days, movies were entirely in black and white and there was no sound. In order to have a soundtrack, musicians performed while the movie was shown. There were captions to tell the audience what the characters were saying. Nearly 20 more pirate movies were made before 1935's Captain Blood ushered an entirely new era of screen pirates. While still in black and white, it had an impressive soundtrack that was nominated for an Academy Award. At 2 hours, its running time was the same length as a modern movie. It starred Errol Flynn as the pirate Captain Blood of the title, and the success of the movie made him a star. It also meant that thousands of kids across America would run around bouncing on their beds, waving imaginary swords. A few years later, Flynn starred in another pirate movie, The Seahawk, which was also very popular. In the 1940s, many pirate movies were based on books of classic adventure. There were several remakes of Treasure Island, a book by Robert Louis Stevenson, as well as movies more loosely based on works by Jules Verne and others. These movies were intended for an adult audience and usually had a romantic plot, as well as an adventure plot. Some of them, like Frenchman's Creek, were based on new best-selling books and starred the most popular female stars in Hollywood. Over the next 30 years, more than 20 more pirate movies were made in the United States. However, by the 1960s, they had taken a different tone. While the first pirate movies were action-adventure movies for all ages, later pirate movies became children's movies. There were cartoon versions and spin-offs featuring various characters from children's books like Pippi Longstocking and The Adventures of Davy Crockett. Some were comedies that made fun of the original genre. Many of them were poorly produced and were not very popular. Perhaps the ultimate expression of the comic pirate movie was 1987's The Princess Bride. In the movie, a young man becomes the dread pirate Roberts when he's captured at sea. Eventually, he returns to save the girl he loves from marrying the villain. However, the entire story is very tongue-in-cheek, with even the action sequences played for laughs. Though The Princess Bride was both funny and popular, it seemed to mark the end of the pirate movie as an adventure story. In the late 80s and 90s, there were another half-dozen or so pirate movies that were intended for children, including Muppets, Treasure Island, and the animated Treasure Planet. One of the few attempts to make a more mature pirate movie was Steven Spielberg's Hook. It suffered bad reviews and failed to attract viewers in the theater, despite starring Robin Williams. It seemed that the pirate movie as an adventure story for all ages was done. All of that changed in 2003 with the release of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Not only was it a box office blockbuster, but it earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor for Johnny Depp as Captain Jack Sparrow. While the movie is undeniably funny, it is a classic adventure story for all ages rather than being purely a comedy or children's movie. In fact, some parents thought it was too scary for young children. The spooky parts were decidedly not played for laughs, and the action was quite intense. While the plot was very conventional, featuring the well-worn plot of a young man who must rescue the girl he loves, it was so well done that it resulted in both good reviews and tremendous popularity. Since then, there have been 3 sequels and a smattering of other pirate films, most of them remakes of earlier adventures. Americans are in love with the pirate movie again, and we will have to wait and see what the next pirate story will be. Question 1. What evidence is used to support the claim in paragraph 6? it seemed that the pirate movie as an adventure story for all ages was done. A. An example of a failed attempt to revive the genre. B. The fact that no pirate movie has ever won an award. C. References to the growing success of animated pirate movies. D. References illustrating the decline of the genre after Errol Flynn's movies. 2. How is paragraph 6 structured? A. It lists well-known pirate movies to show that none were successful. B. It documents in time order how pirate movies transition from a children's audience back to an adult one. C. It distinguishes between children's pirate movies and an adult version to show that the latter had lost popularity. D. It contrasts successful examples with an unpopular one to illustrate the most important features for a pirate movie to have. 3. Read this sentence from paragraph 7. In fact, some parents thought it was too scary for young children. What is the purpose of this sentence? A. To tell a strength of Pirates of the Caribbean. B. To explain a problem with Pirates of the Caribbean. C. To contrast Pirates of the Caribbean with previous pirate movies. D. To illustrate that adults are intended audience of Pirates of the Caribbean. 4. Which best states the meaning of ushered in as used in paragraph 2? A. Began. B. Changed. C. Filmed. D. Showed. Paragraph 2. Nearly 20 more pirate movies were made before 1935's Captain Blood ushered in an entirely new era of screen pirates. While still in black and white, it had an impressive soundtrack that was nominated for an Academy Award. At 2 hours, its running time was the same length as a modern movie. It starred Errol Flynn as the pirate Captain Blood of the title, and the success of the movie made him a star. It also meant that thousands of kids across America would run around, bouncing on their beds, waving imaginary swords. A few years later, Flynn starred in another pirate movie, The Seahawk, which was also very popular. Question 4. Which best states the meaning of ushered in as used in paragraph 2? A. Began. C. Changed. C. Filmed. D. Showed. Question 5. Which best states the central idea of paragraph 4? A. In the 1960s, pirate movies based on books became the most popular. B. By the 1960s, more than 30 pirate movies had been made in the United States. C. In the 1960s, pirate movies became less serious and adopted more themes from comedies and children's stories. D. By the 1960s, pirate movies had suffered a loss in popularity due to poor production and comic themes that audiences did not like. Paragraph 4 states, over the next 30 years, more than 20 more pirate movies were made in the United States. However, by the 1960s, they had taken a different tone. While the first pirate movies were action-adventure movies for all ages, later pirate movies became children's movies. There were cartoon versions and spin-offs featuring various characters from children's books like Pippi Longstocking and The Adventures of Davy Crockett. Some were comedies that made fun of the original genre. Many of them were poorly produced and were not very popular. Question 5. Which best states the central idea of paragraph 4? A. In the 1960s, pirate movies based on books became the most popular. B. By the 1960s, more than 30 pirate movies had been made in the United States. C. In the 1960s, pirate movies became less serious and adopted more themes from comedies and children's stories. D. By the 1960s, pirate movies had suffered a loss in popularity due to poor production and comic themes that audiences did not like. 6. Which is the best summary of the passage? A. Pirate movies were originally short, black and white films. Over time, they became longer and were filmed in color. B. Pirate movies are usually comedies or children's movies. Because many of them are poorly produced, these movies fail to attract wide audiences. C. Pirate movies have been popular with both children and adults since the early 1900s. Audiences are captivated by the adventurous plots and exciting action sequences. D. Pirate movies began as adult adventures, but shifted toward mainly comedies and children's stories over several decades. Recent films have brought about a comeback for adventurous pirate movies. Passage 2 for final practice in fiction, titled Undefeated. Paragraph 1. Why would anybody schedule a game during fall break? I grumbled to my dad as we waited for the light to change. My dad glanced over at me. It's fall break for you, but the Panthers are in the next school district. Their fall break was last week. This was the first game of the championship ladder, the qualifying game, and since it was right in the middle of my school's fall break, half the volleyball team wouldn't be there. Their families had plans that were more important than volleyball games. Only 6 of us were going to be in town, and that was the minimum number of players that had to be on the court at one time. If anybody didn't show, we'd have to forfeit, and that's what this story is about. I wasn't usually what you'd call most valuable player material. I was the kind of clumsy kid who isn't really good at sports, and I'm not really sure why I decided to go out for volleyball last year, my first year in middle school, except that going out for teams was one of those things you were supposed to do, part of the experience. I sure wasn't very good at volleyball, but in middle school, everybody made the team. I met my best friend Marcy in volleyball. She was in 7th grade when I was in 6th, so we didn't have any classes together, but we totally bonded over volleyball. Marcy was at the beach with her family this week instead of playing the first game of the championship ladder. Last year, I'd been on the no-cut baby team. This year, Marcy and I were both on the real team, and how I'd gotten there was a long story. See, Marcy was actually good, and she was a rising 8th grader, so it dawned on me that Marcy was going to make the real team in the fall. That meant she'd go to all of the away games, and I'd be back at school playing 4 or 5 games on the baby team, where people tended to shriek and cover their heads when the ball came over the net. So if I didn't want to get left while Marcy went on trips, I'd better get busy and figure out some way to make the real team. So I enlisted my dad to help. I've got to make it, I said, and I need a coach. Dad rigged a rope across the backyard at the same height as the top of the net so I could practice my serve. I started out with about 1 in 6 clearing the net and the rest going straight into the hydrangea bush. But it got better with my dad saying things like, point the toe of your lead foot where you want the ball to go. Also, he drafted my sister, who is going to be in the 5th grade in the fall. You can't do rallies by yourself, he said. My sister had always excellent at sports, and she was as good as most of the middle school players. By July, we could keep it going a really long time. 10 or 12 exchanges before somebody hit the ball over the bushes and had to chase it through the neighbor's yard. We practiced every single day, and I do mean every day. Even when the temperature was 100 degrees, I was out there. Those away games and pizza parties grimly in my sights. Even my dad thought I was overdoing it. You're not training for the Olympics, he said. This is a middle school volleyball. Your life doesn't depend on it. But it kind of did. I was absolutely determined that I was going to make the cut. Like I meant something important. Something about who I could be if I tried. I made the team. In fact, I made first substitute, which meant that I played in every single game. I got to go on all the trips with Marcy and sat with the team at lunch. Everything was great until the 3rd day of fall break, the day before the first championship ladder game, when I fell down the basement steps with a load of laundry on top of me. I was being really helpful taking stuff down, but maybe I wasn't looking where I was going because I tripped over my own feet and fell down the last 6 steps. It was just bumps and bruises except for my left ankle, which hurt like fury. My dad took a good look at it, turning it around and around while I stood on one foot in the doorway. "I don't think it's broken," he said. "It's just a bad sprain." He looked up at me over his glasses. "I guess you won't be playing tomorrow. It's just a game." "I have to play," I protested. "We only have 6 people in town. If I don't play, we have to forfeit. If we have to forfeit the first game of the ladder, that's it. Our season is over. I've got to play tomorrow." Dad took a deep breath. "I could tape it," he said. "That's what I did one time in football in high school when I banged myself up right before a game. It will give you some stability." So he taped it just before we drove to the game. "You okay?" he asked under his breath as we got out of the car. "Yeah," I said quietly. "It hurt a lot." Walking across the parking lot normally was hard. But if I looked like I was limping, Coach would want to know why. And she'd probably tell me I have to sit out and we'd forfeit. So I walked normally, every step jarring all the way to the back of my neck. And yeah, it hurt, but not as much as failing would. It seemed like it took forever to get out on the court, but I was the starting server. That was excellent because I could do that with just 2 steps. The same old thing I'd done until it was perfect. The referee blew his whistle and I took a deep breath and looked through the net. The Panther girls spread out on the court. I saw the gap. 2 steps. My arm coming forward and the ball sailed straight over the net and into the gap. The left forward dove for it, but she didn't touch it. A cheer went up from the side of the stands. "Back to you," Coach said with a grin as the referee passed the ball back. There was a new gap between the center and their left forward. 2 steps. "Point!" yelled the referee. They hit the third serve, a wild one that went into the bleachers. "Point!" The fourth was a rally, and I had to come forward and take the pass, but I didn't really feel my ankle much. 5 was clean, clearing the net by half an inch and nearly taking the ball right off their setter's head before it hit. 6 was a rally, but our left forward hit a mean spike right down the line. 7 was clean. I was euphoric. My ankle didn't hurt at all. When they got a spike on 8, it was coming straight to me, and I went down on one knee to get it, just like it says in the book, nice and high and straight to our setter. They didn't return the serve on 9 or 10. 11 was a rally that was fought for 8 hits before they knocked it out of bounds. 12 was right to their sweating setter, who wasn't even close. 13 was the nicest serve yet, barely in bounds of the right sideline. 14 was a rally, and they got it on the 6th hit when our spike didn't clear the net. It was 13-0, our favor, and their serve. But the heart had gone out of them. We were riding the wave, and they didn't even get a single point because we won the rally. Then it was time to rotate, and I was the center, my least favorite position on the court. Allie served a nice high one, and it came back straight to me. A pivot on that ankle that probably should have sent me to the floor screaming, but it didn't. I didn't feel a thing. Just the adrenaline and the glory. Bump into our setter. The spike was the point. 14-0. "One to go," Coach said, and that gave Allie everything she needed. She served the point, 15-zip, and our bleachers exploded. People thumped each other on the back, hugged, shouted, jumped, the whole 9 yards. There is my dad, camera in hand. One good picture before he hugged me. "I am so proud of you," he whispered. "I thought you said it was just a game," I said. Dad shook his head. "I was wrong," he said. "It's about who you'll be." 1. Which explains a difference in points of view that creates a tension in the plot of Undefeated. A. Everyone knows about the narrator's injury, but only her father and the team coach realize how serious it is. B. The readers know how the narrator's injury, but the coach and players do not. C. The narrator knows how important the game is, but the narrator's father does not. D. The readers know who will win the game, but none of the characters do. 2. Which evidence from the text best supports the answer to question 1? A. It's just a bad sprain. He looked up at me over his glasses. I guess you won't be playing tomorrow. It's just a game. B. I could tape it, he said. That's what I did one time in football in high school when I banged myself up right before a game. It will give you some stability. C. Walking across the parking lot normally was hard, but if I looked like I was limping, Coach would want to know why, and she'd probably tell me I had to sit out and we'd forfeit. D. Allie served a nice high one, and it came back straight to me, a pivot on that ankle that probably should have sent me to the floor screaming, but it didn't. Question 1. Which explains a difference in points of view that creates tension in the plot of Undefeated? A. Everyone knows about the narrator's injury, but only her father and the team coach realize how serious it is. B. The readers know about the narrator's injury, but the coach and players do not. C. The narrator knows how important the game is, but the narrator's father does not. D. The readers know who will win the game, but none of the characters do. Question 2. Which evidence from the text best supports the answer to question 1? A. It's just a bad sprain. He looked up at me over his glasses. I guess you won't be playing tomorrow. It's just a game. B. I could tape it, he said. That's what I did one time in football in high school when I banged myself up right before a game. It will give you some stability. C. Walking across the parking lot normally was hard, but if I looked like I was limping, Coach would want to know why. And she'd probably tell me I had to sit out and we'd forfeit. D. Allie served a nice high one, and it came back straight to me, a pivot on that ankle that probably should have sent me to the floor screaming, but it didn't. 3. Which definition of the related word stable most closely matches the meaning of stability as used in paragraph 14? A. As a noun, a building that serves as a shelter for livestock. B. Adjective, unlikely to give way or collapse under weight. C. Adjective, medical, unlikely to worsen to life-threatening condition rapidly or without warning. D. Noun, informal, a group of professionals working under the same management. Going back to paragraph 14. Paragraph 14 reads, Dad took a deep breath. I could tape it, he said. That's what I did one time in football in high school when I banged myself up right before a game. It will give you some stability. Question 3. Which definition of the related word stable most closely matches the meaning of stability as used in paragraph 14? A. Noun, a building that serves as shelter for livestock. B. Adjective, unlikely to give way or collapse under weight. C. Adjective, medical, unlikely to worsen to life-threatening condition rapidly or without warning. D. Noun, informal, a group of professionals working under the same management. 4. What does Dad suggest by saying, you're not training for the Olympics? A. The narrator is not working hard enough. B. The narrator is practicing more than she needs to. C. The narrator should take her training as seriously as a top athlete. D. The narrator should stop trying to make the national team. 5. Which of Dad's actions most directly affects the main character's most important choice? A. He offers to tape her injured ankle. B. He asks her sister to help at practices. C. He explains why the game is scheduled during break. D. He takes a picture before he hugs her. 6. Which is the theme of the story? A. Competition is not healthy for children. B. Sibling rivalry may cause problems, but it can also be beneficial. C. Keeping a commitment is an important part of growing up. D. You should never blindly follow your friends.